The nature of the state. Introduction. In this study section, we will examine the concept of the state and historical theories about the evolution of the state. Also to be discussed here are the relevance of the state and the nature of state in Africa. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this section, you should be able to define and use correctly the following terms in bold: state, sovereignty. Discuss at least 4 theories of the origin of the state. Enumerate the purpose of the state. Describe the nature of states in Africa. The concept of states. There have been several historical accounts concerning how men, in generic terms, come to live under the political organization called the state. Let us note that the state is a body that exercises sovereignty over and on behalf of the citizens. Some of the theories of the origin of the state include, but not limited to, the following: the social contract theory, the divine right theory, the force theory, the patriarchal theory, the matriarchal theory, and the evolutionary theory. Appadurai, 1975. 19. Sovereignty. The word sovereignty is derived from the Latin word superanus, and it means supremacy. To talk about sovereignty in any given situation, we imply looking for the supreme authority, or that person who is supreme from which commands flow. And since this person is supreme, his commands become laws that must be carried out. According to Appadurai, sovereignty may be defined as the power of the state to make law with all the coercive power it cares to employ. Appadurai, 1975, 48. Sovereignty is therefore that characteristics of the state in virtue of which it cannot be legally bound, except by its own will, or limited by any other power than itself. So when it is claimed that the modern state is sovereign, what it simply connotes is that it is subject to no higher human authority. This conception of sovereignty was introduced by the French writer Jean Bodin into political theory. The concept of sovereignty originated when Europeans in the 16th and 17th centuries were looking for a secular basis for the authority of the imagined nation states. In international relations, a sovereign state is equal to other states. It can govern its own territory, declare war, and so on. Contemporary international law, however, as well as the treaties that bind nations together, have modified the free-willing absolute sovereignty conceived of 4 centuries ago. The United Nations is the main legal body today that acts as a check on sovereignty. Hints. According to Bodin, in every independent community governed by law, there must be some authority, whether residing in one person or several, whereby the laws themselves are established and from which they proceed. This power, because it constitutes the source of law, must be above the law, but not above duty and moral responsibility. Problems with Bodin's conception of sovereignty. 1. There were some fundamental laws which the sovereign could not lawfully abrogate. 2. That private property, being granted by law of nature and therefore inviolable, the sovereign could not tax the subjects without their consent. Other conceptions of sovereignty. Many other political theorists have developed some other conception of sovereignty. Of course, These conceptions are not radically different from Bodin's conception, since they are all about the supreme authority. Hugo Grotius emphasizes external sovereignty by which the state is free from external control. Thomas Hobbes made sovereignty absolute and located it in the ruler, the Leviathan, which emerged as a result of social contracts. John Locke claimed that the supreme power in the state lies with the people. J.J. Rosian maintained that sovereignty belonged to the people and it could be exercised only in an assembly of the whole people. To him, government is the executive agent of the general will. We should note that sovereignty of the people in Rosian's was as unlimited as that of Hobbes. Jeremiah Bentham agrees that sovereignty is unlimited by law. However, it is not morally unlimited. This is because in practice, it is limited by the possibility of resistance, and there are conditions under which resistance is morally justifiable. Therefore, Bentham expresses the need for the sovereign to justify its power by useful legislation, good governance, with the object of promoting the greatest happiness of the greatest number. According to J.L. Austin, first in every state, there must be a sovereign, and the sovereign's power is unlimited and indivisible. Second, the sovereign must be clearly located. And third, the commands of the sovereign are laws. A law in the Austinian view can be defined as a command of the state, obliging the subject to do or to refrain from doing certain acts, failure to obey being visited by a penalty. The location of sovereignty. From the analysis above, one can say that the location of supreme authority in a state depends on the system of government. In Britain, for instance, the supreme authority is located in the Queen and Parliament. In the United States of America, the location of the sovereign is not so determinate. The powers of government are divided between the central government and the state government, and this is approved by the Constitution. In some democracies, whether liberal or socialist, the sovereign is said to reside with the people, that is, the electorate, because they are the ones that transfer their individual sovereignty to a body called government to use on their behalf. It must be noted, however, that in whichever body the sovereignty is located, that body is supreme and legitimate. Tip: sovereignty is the supreme authority of the state that is subject to no other higher authority. The major limitation to sovereignty is if it violates natural or moral laws. It should also be noted that all the various conceptions of sovereignty are interconnected. Lastly, we show that the location of sovereignty is not determinate, as it depends mainly on the system of government particular state practices. Historical theories on the origin of the states. 1. Social contract theory. There are many versions of this theory. The central claim of this theory is that the state came into existence as a result of an agreement, compact or contract, entered into by persons who originally had no governmental organization. Many of the social contract theorists, such as Hobbes, Locke, and Rosian, describe this situation of no government organization as state of nature. According to Thomas Hobbes, 1588 to 1679, in the state of nature, men will be at war with each other. The state of nature is a state of war, the war of every man against every other man. In such a state, there shall not be progress in industries, leisure, and in culture. In that state, man's life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. In that state, the instinct of self self-preservation will, however, manifest itself, and that is when reason will begin to play its part. Thus, the instinct of self-preservation will express itself in reason in such a way that reason will, in view of the perils of the state of nature, discover the laws of nature. A law of nature is a general rule or precept discovered by reason, by which man is forbidden to endanger his own life. Hobbes believes that reason will lead men to seek peace and renounce or transfer their rights to one person or a group of persons in a covenant. Through this covenant, all the natural rights of individuals, all their strength and powers will be conferred on a man or a body of men. This transfer of rights is to a commonwealth called the Leviathan. The commonwealth is synonymous to Rousseau's general will and Locke's civil government. To Hobbes, therefore, reason will rescue man from the state of nature to civil society. Men will come together to create a sovereign who will have absolute powers over them. Divine rights theory. This theory is based on the divine right of kings. It is premised on God and could be described in the following ways: that the state has been established by ordinance of God, that its rulers are divinely appointed, and that such rulers have been divinely appointed and are accountable to no authority but God. The divine right is succinctly expressed and propounded by Robert Filmer in his Patriarcha published in 1680. According to Appadurai, the importance of this theory is essentially historical. For instance, it helped to support the claims of certain rulers, like James I of England, to govern absolutely and without being accountable to their people. Theory of force. The first theory of the state is founded on the might is right template. It is simply expressed as war begat the king. Appadurai, 1975-32. It expresses the fact that the state is the result of the subjugation of the weak by the stronger. This kind of state is territorial in character, meaning that all those who live within the territory of the ruler were bound to obey his commands. One can criticize this type of state by noting that while force has been one of the elements in the formation of the state, it would be wrong to say that it is the sole factor, as there are other elements or causes such as kingship, religion, force, and political consciousness. Patriarchal theory. The import of this theory is that the state is an extension of the family, the head of the state being the father, the people and his children. According to Sir Henry Maine in his books Ancient Law, 1861, An Early History of Institutions, 1875, the evidence of patriarchal states are given evidence from three major sources: from accounts by contemporary observers of civilizations less advanced than their own, from the records which particular races, e.g. the Greeks, have kept of their own history, and from ancient law, e.g. Roman and Hindu. The theory can be expressed thus: the unit of primitive society was the family, whereby descent was traced through males and in which the eldest male parents were absolutely supreme. His power was absolute and extended to life and death, and was as unqualified over his children and their houses as over his slaves. The single family breaks up into more families, which all held together under the head of the family, the chief or patriarch, become the tribe, and an aggregation of tribes becomes the state. This theory claims that the patriarchal society was the foundation of modern society and has three main features, namely male kingship, permanent marriage, and paternal authority. The merit of this theory is that it emphasizes the essential elements of kingship in the formation of states. Matriarchal theory. Almost an opposite of the patriarchal theory. It holds that the primitive group had no common male head and that kingship among them could be traced only through the women. This theory is well developed by McLennan in the book Primitive Society, 1865, Morgan in the book Studies in Ancient Society, 1877, and Jenks in the book A History of Politics, 1900. The major criticism against this theory is that it is incorrect to regard matriarchal society as the oldest form of social organization everywhere. In fact, the patriarchal theory has had more prominence than the matriarchal theory. The evolutionary theory. The evolutionary theory does not consider the state as a divine institution, nor as a deliberate human contrivance, but that does the state come into existence as a result of natural evolution. In other words, the state is seen as a product of human history, which means that it is a gradual and continuous development of human society out of a grossly imperfect beginning, through crude but improving forms of manifestation towards a perfect and universal organization of mankind. The logical inference from this is that the beginnings of governments cannot be traced to a particular time or cause. It is the result of various factors through ages. Such factors include kingship, religion, war, and political consciousness. From the foregoing, we can define the state according to Woodrow Wilson as a people organized within a definite territory. It consists of people, associations, and the government. From this definition, the characteristics of a state include, among others, a definite territory within which law and order is maintained by a supreme authority. A government which is organized to achieve the purposes of a state, a system of laws which is binding on all individuals and associations within that state. The state has monopoly of coercive power, and it is sovereign in the sense that it has freedom to conduct its own domestic affairs. The purpose of the state. Since we are now conversant with the features of the state, it is pertinent to state that the purpose of the state can only be discerned through government. In other words, when we talk about the purpose or duty or role of the state, we are talking about the purpose of government. Therefore, government, a body legally constituted to run the affairs of the state, is the mirror through which we view the purpose of the state. Though the state is larger than the government, it is through government, especially the three major arms, executive, legislature, and judiciary, that the activities of the state are carried out. The state enhances the rights and liberties of the citizens such that they carry out their daily activities and rational aspirations without any hindrances. The state protects the territory, which is always occupied by its citizens from external and internal aggressions. The state provides the right atmosphere for citizens to actualize their potentialities and attain happy life. According to Oladipo 2001-7, the primary function of government is the maintenance of peace, order, and harmony in society through the effective coordination of public affairs. This combination of tasks is not an end in itself. Rather, it is a means to an end. the end of which is the enhancement of the capacity of individuals to survive and flourish. Nature of states in Africa. The nature of states in Africa derived more from a combination of factors. Primary among these factors are the colonial background and various ethnic configuration, which have made governance a daunting task in most African states. Other factors that determine the nature of states in Africa include military intervention in newly independent states and the autocratic civilian governments of the 1960s and 1970s, which have dovetailed into present times. These factors have wittingly or unwittingly been responsible for the inability of states in Africa to meet the yearnings and desires of their citizens and dearth of development in all ramifications. Oyeshile 2011, page 53. Some of the problems that have emanated in many states in Africa include political and economic corruption, ethnic conflicts, religion chauvinism, lack of security to lives and properties, lack of democratization, and a general disbelief in leadership. There is thus a shattering hope of the people after political independence in most African states, which then makes it very imperative to have proper democratization, which would enable the state to carry out its function, which will include not only the maintenance of law and order, but in creating the conditions of decent life for the people. Oyeshide 2011, page 57. Oladipo 2001, page 9. Study section summary. In this study section, we examine some theories of the origin of the states, their strengths and weaknesses in some cases. We gave a working definition of the state and enumerated its salient features or characteristics. Lastly, we embarked on the examination of the nature of the state in Africa, showing the factors militating against states in Africa from optimal performance. End of study section 2. Thanks for listening.